the men that had drifted back all got their blankets, and we went down to the stream. And we sat there on a log at the edge of the stream and watched the fire coming.
In the summer of 1910, the forests of the American Northwest were a powder keg waiting to explode. Months of extreme drought had left the region brittle and dry. The states of Idaho, Montana, and Washington were covered in dense forests, much of which had been slashed and scarred by the booming logging industry. The railroads that cut through these forests were lifelines for the towns, but also ticking time bombs as the sparks from locomotives easily ignited the dry underbrush. Small fires had been smoldering for weeks, started by lightning strikes, careless campers, and the constant flicker of sparks from passing trains. By August, more than 1,000 small fires dotted the landscape, and the understaffed, poorly equipped U.S. Forest Service struggled to control them. Few could have predicted how quickly those scattered flames would merge into an unstoppable inferno. Then came the winds. On August 20th, 1910, a fierce cold front swept through the region, whipping the flames into a massive firestorm. Suddenly, walls of fire hundreds of feet high tore through the forest, devouring everything in their path. Trees exploded from the intense heat, and entire hillsides ignited in seconds. The fire moves with terrifying speed, consuming 3 million acres in just 2 days. Towns like Wallace, Idaho, were overrun, with residents fleeing as flames licked at the edges of their homes. In some places, people barely escaped with their lives, while others were not so fortunate. The smoke darkened the sky for hundreds of miles, turning day into night. The fire spread so rapidly that even experienced woodsmen and firefighters were caught off guard. These men were sent into the inferno with little more than hand tools and wet blankets. Among these men was Ed Pulaski, a ranger in the Forest Service, whose leadership during the fire would become the stuff of legend. As the flames closed in, Pulaski led his crew of 45 men through the burning forest. Realizing they had no chance of outrunning the fire, he made a desperate decision. He guided his men into an abandoned mining tunnel near Wallace, Idaho, ordering them to lie flat and cover their faces with wet clothes. As smoke and heat filled the tunnel, panic set in. Some of the men tried to flee, but Pulaski drew his pistol, threatening to shoot anyone who left. His harsh command may have been the only thing that saved them. For hours, they endured suffocating smoke and blistering heat, but Pulaski's leadership kept them alive. When the fire finally passed, Pulaski and 38 of his men stumbled out of the mine, burned and battered but alive. His bravery became a symbol of the struggle against the fire. Not everyone was so lucky. In total, 78 firefighters and 9 civilians lost their lives in the Great Fire. Many of these men were buried where they fell, their sacrifices barely recorded in the chaos. Yet their deaths highlighted the danger and unpreparedness of fighting wildfires without proper training or equipment. In the aftermath of the fire, the landscape was unrecognizable. Entire forests turned to ash, wildlife was wiped out, and communities were gone. The destruction was total. But out of the ashes came significant change. The Great Fire of 1910 profoundly shaped America's approach to wildfire management. The U.S. Forest Service, previously seen as a small and underfunded agency, was suddenly thrust into the national spotlight. Public opinion shifted, recognizing the need for a stronger, better-funded force to manage and protect the nation's forests. The fire became a rallying point for the Forest Service, leading to increased funding, more staffing, and the development of more effective firefighting strategies. Fire suppression became the central policy, and aggressive firefighting was seen as a necessity to prevent another disaster. This approach, while effective in the short term, created new challenges by allowing dead trees and underbrush to accumulate, setting the stage for further massive wildfires. The Great Fire of 1910 also introduced practical innovations. The Pulaski tool, a combination of an axe and a hoe, was developed in response to the fire and became a standard tool for wildland firefighting. Policies were introduced to build fire lookout towers, create fire breaks, and improve communication lines in forested areas. But the fire also raised deeper questions about how humans should interact with nature. Should every fire be suppressed, or was a fire a necessary part of natural ecosystems? The Great Fire of 1910 was more than a natural disaster. It was a turning point in America's relationship with its forests and how it managed the threat of wildfire. The bravery of men like Ed Pulaski and the tragic loss of life exposed the harsh realities of firefighting and the cost of being unprepared. The lessons learned from the Big Burn reshaped wildlife policies for generations, and its legacy still influences how we battle wildfires today, In many ways, the flames that scorched the Northwest over a century ago still burn in the decisions we make about our forests and how we choose to protect them.